The market, I think, at this point is trying to work out the significance of China given the 5% target that it is aiming for. It seems like an almighty challenge to get to 5% without stimulus. How are you thinking about what we've heard today and the significance for global growth?
It does feel like there's a gap there, and I just don't know how they're going to fill it. It seems like we have seen some discussion of modest policy measures, but they're all pretty kind of tentative, and they're not going to get us past 5. We're expecting growth of just below 5, kind of assuming everything continues to pick up and we see momentum building from last year, when really the carryover effect was the kind of most important thing that got us over 5% at all. We won't have that again, so I think it's unlikely to be met.
So if we have a slightly weaker interpretation for China again this year, much like last year, what does it leave policymakers in the West? Because it doesn't feel as though China is going to stir any further inflation at this point, thanks to some sort of roaring growth story.
Probably not, and I suppose in a sense that's good news. We don't have the Fed and the ECB worried that they're going to have new imported inflation, kind of throwing off the calculus for where they've come so far. We have other risks like shipping prices and things like that that promise to stay high, and that mean that trade between China and the West could be volatile in terms of input costs and the like. But without renewed price pressures from China, I guess it means the inflationary picture is a bit more predictable, but not healthy, certainly not for China.
I guess I'm just a worrier, Cailin, because rather than being applauding there's not going to be an inflationary impetus coming out of the Chinese economy, I'm worried about where the deflation is coming from out of the Chinese economy. And now I think it's coming in EVs, and I think that could be a red rag to a bull to an industry which is, I think, struggling in Europe and finding its feet in the United States as well. If BYD and the other echelons of Chinese producers are going to just flood Europe or continue to flood at a better price than the Europeans can do, I see political risk on both sides of the Pacific and indeed in Europe with China as well.
Yeah, and we've seen some early movement on the prospect for increasing tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles in Europe. Earlier days discussions of something similar in the US, but we certainly would expect to see more industrial protection for the auto sector and particularly EVs from the US when we get a little bit further down the road in this industrial